Like the last speaker before the panel. I don't know if that's good or bad, but what great content. I was actually listening to Sterling, and one of my favorite business books is not at all a business book. It's The Boys in the Boat. Anybody know that book? It's so good. Read it if you haven't. So I'm very excited to be here today. I want to talk to you all about something that I wish I had known when I was a CS leader as a practitioner. I started in software in 1999 in Austin, Texas, and I pretty quickly fell into customer success in the early days and stuck with it. I was laughing when Christy was talking about consultants. I never thought I would be a consultant. It was not anything I wanted to do, but a few years ago, I ran into a company called Winning by Design, which some of you in here are clients of ours, you know. And I was so blown away by the content and the IP that they had done, and I was so thrilled by the idea of helping other practitioners use it that I made the leap. And so for the past 2-3 years, I've been a consultant. Now, what is really unique about Winning by Design is I am not a CS consultant. I am a revenue architect. And the question is always, what does that mean? So I'm going to walk through an analogy to explain it. Anybody recognize this? Golden Gate Bridge, right. So this was designed in 1917 by a guy named Joseph Strauss, who was an engineer and a philosopher, which I thought was a cool combination. At the time, it was the longest suspension bridge ever built. So pause and think about that for a second. All the money, all of the time that went into building something no one had ever done before. Like, how do you have confidence in something like that? And it's still standing today. He obviously did it very well. And the reason is because Joseph Strauss understood the key elements of suspension bridges, what was needed. He knew that those key components had other key components. There's cables, there's different kinds of cables. And if you're going to make a change in one part of the design, you need to compensate for it in another. It's the same thing with recurring revenue companies. Companies operate as systems. We might work sometimes in silos, but the company does not. It is a system. And there are rules that govern recurring revenue systems. And if you can understand these rules, then you can play better within them. So what I want to do today is walk you through some things that if you are finding yourself as a CS leader fighting for investment, fighting for dollars, headcount, tools, whatever, there are core reasons why CS needs to be invested in if you want to build a sustainable recurring revenue company. It is not a nice to have, it is not an opinion, it is a fact. And I'm going to show you why so that when you have conversations with your leaders, you can actually frame your storytelling, to Christy's earlier point, around these things. I love this quote. This philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, "The problem is not so much to see what nobody has yet seen, but to think what nobody has yet thought about that which everyone sees." So some of what I'll show you is not necessarily going to be revelatory, but the hope is that the lens that I'll put on it might be a little bit different. If you are familiar with Winning by Design, some of the things I'll show might be familiar. That's great. But these are some things that really helped me and that I wish I knew sooner when I was a CS leader. I'm going to walk you through 4 different things. One is called the growth curve. I'm going to walk you through the right framework for recurring revenue companies, a key metric for measuring future success, and then how to get the math to actually work for you in CS. Because if you can do that, you have a lot more power. All right, this is a fact. The recurring revenue companies are governed by an S-curve. This is how they work. They start slow at the bottom, there is growth. When you hit total available market, it flattens out. You can't sustain growth forever. You're going to hit your market, and then you're going to have to either make choices to add products, expand your market, whatever it is. There's 4 stages along this growth curve. There's your startup stage, when you're figuring out product market fit, your pricing, all those kind of things. Then there's your scale-up phase, where you're leaning into what works and you're stopping what doesn't work. You get into your grown-up phase, where you're doing more of what works more efficiently. And then you get to your enterprise phase, where, as I mentioned, you're looking to expand your total available market. This is how recurring revenue companies work. Depending on where your company is on this curve, your system is going to operate differently. There's a lot on this slide, but this is our winning by design growth model, and you can see the same S-curve. A couple of things noteworthy about this slide and why I like to show it. The percentages in black above the line represent the number of companies that actually make it successfully to the next stage. It drops really significantly as it goes up. Because the gray arrows, which, can you even see those on there? There are lots of points along this curve where companies fall off. If you are like me, you have worked for some of these companies that, for whatever reason, ended up not being successful. And they struggled. So the goal is to figure out where you are in this curve and understand how to invest properly in it and how to manage it, depending on where you are. Somebody mentioned yesterday, I can't remember who it was, what got you here won't get you there. This is why. Because you're going to have different needs as a company as you move along this curve. So that's the growth curve. This should look pretty familiar. The classic sales funnel. Everyone knows this, right? Very linear. Leads go in the top, deals come out the bottom. If you want to get more deals out the bottom, what do? More leads in the top, exactly, yeah. So this, though, does not work for recurring revenue companies. Why not? Recurring revenue is just not in this image. It's not there. And yet, I constantly see leaders who are making decisions about the business based on this framework, but they have a recurring revenue company. Recurring revenue is just not in the classic sales funnel, and yet it's still being relied upon to make decisions. So what we've done at Winning by Design, and this will look familiar to a lot of you, is we tip this funnel on its side. It is still valid, but it is now part of a bow tie. The left side remains leads coming in, the sales process. The center is commit, when the customer commits to you, and you commit to the customer to deliver impact. The right side is customer success. You have onboarding, adoption, achieving impact, renewal, expansion. I always say that I actually am wary about the term customer success because depending on who I'm talking to, when I say that sometimes, they assume just CSMs. When I say it, I mean the right side of the bow tie. I mean onboarding, I mean CSMs, I mean TAMs, support, whoever's owning renewals, whoever is owning expansion. This bow tie is really important. As you move through, once you get through the left side, a deal is won. The goal, to Donna's point yesterday, is achieve first impact. When you keep delivering impact, you get growth, and you see these arrows over here on the right side. That is your growth engine. If you are a recurring revenue company, your growth engine sits on the right side of the bow tie. And if you're a CS leader and you can't articulate this, then learn how to do it. And make sure your CEO, your CFO, your board understand this too. Because CS powers the growth engine of recurring revenue companies. I will toss out the exception is a strong word, but if you're just starting out as a company, you need to build your customer base. So yes, you might need to lean into the left side more. But eventually, you really need to lean into that growth engine on the right side. This brings us to one of the other things that governs recurring revenue companies. Recurring revenue is the result of recurring impact. I was so excited by a bunch of the sessions yesterday because this came up many times, that customers won't stay with you and they won't grow if they're not getting something from you repeatedly over time. So this is the first principle of recurring revenue businesses. The other thing that's important, along with the growth curve and the bow tie, is this ratio. Is anybody familiar with this ratio, has seen it before or looks at it in their business? A few. Okay, lifetime value to cost of acquisition ratio. This is becoming one of the top metrics that recurring revenue companies should look at. Investors are using this to determine whether or not your business is sustainable. It is not about growth at all costs anymore. It is about sustainability. This number is super important, and investors are looking for this ratio as a minimum, 3 to 1. 4 to 1 is better, 5 to 1 is great, but this is the minimum. So let's talk about what that means. I'm going to walk through an example. This chart on the left is from Bessemer, and it breaks down the average CAC payback period for deals in different ARR bands. We're going to walk through an example of a product that's $50,000 a year. The payback period, according to Bessemer, is 21 months. So that means if you lose them after 12 months, you have lost money on that deal. So you'll hang on to them for 21 months. Great, right? You're good. 3 to 1 ratio. You need to hang on to that customer for 63 months or the financial equivalent thereof through expansion. Who within your organization is going to make sure that that 63 months happens? It's you guys. It's you guys and your teams. It's not the sales team. They can help. It's not marketing. They can help. It's not the product team. It is, to Sterling's point, everybody in the boat together. But this is a number that is important, and CS has the most power over this number. This is just the reality of it. So if your company is not investing in CS, and investors are looking at it, and they're looking for that 3 to 1 ratio, then there's obviously a disconnect. There's another thing that I wish I knew back in the day, and that I love to share with people. One more point. I see this all the time, where whenever revenue drops or there's any kind of concern, or the economy, as we have right now, things go on, investment automatically goes to the left side. Higher BDRs, higher AEs, sales training. Really, I'm not trying to say that sales is not important. What I am trying to say is that you need to achieve this balance. And there's a relationship between this and the growth curve. In that early part of the growth curve, as I pointed out earlier, you should be investing more in sales. But you do need to be investing ahead in CS and then balance out as you grow. And that brings us, again, to the first principle and your growth engine on the right side. Now, I didn't say there wouldn't be math, so it's actually not really math. I'm going to walk you through a few different lines that illustrate a really powerful point. This is just to level set. This line is just a constant. The example is that you sell one product for $100. You get a constant line across. The bottom, the x-axis is time, and revenue is the y-axis. Now, if you sell 10 products a month for $100 each, you get this line up and to the right. That's good, right? It's linear. That's pretty good. But what you really want to do is on your left side, your sales team, you want to optimize so that they keep selling more and they do it more efficiently. What you end up with then is what's called a polynomial line. This is really attractive. This is great. This is what happens when a sales team is running really efficiently. This is the best line that the left side of the bow tie working in new acquisition can get. And this is what you want. This is great. On the right side of the bow tie, there is a component that the left side does not have when it comes to math and thinking through revenue. Anybody know what that might be? It is renewal cycles. The way that math works is that as you renew, every year, if you can even just add 3% onto contract value, you will start to create a compound line that will get steeper and steeper over time. If you can expand that contract size, it'll just continue to get steeper. That is something that the left side of the bow tie just can't do. They don't have the renewal cycles to play with. You do in CS. There is one thing that leaders that are making short-term decisions can sometimes struggle with. You can see how that pink line takes longer to start going up. That's because CS is a longer-term investment. We all know that. You're not going to see the payout from it until you get to your renewal cycle, or or until you start getting the growth in those deals. So it will be lower in the beginning, but that is what you need in order to get that really dramatic spike up. And this is just math. So if you can figure out how to leverage this and you can use this conversation with your CFO, you can really start justifying spend in CS. And you can talk about it in terms of, with the left side of the bow tie too, hopefully they're doing this, but you have some levers that they just simply don't have to play with. So when it comes to this word impact, I've heard it mentioned a few times in different sessions. I've said it a lot. That first principle is that recurring revenue is the result of recurring impact. But I want to talk about what impact means for a second when I say it. I think it was Greg yesterday was talking about the 5 whys, right? Impact is like an onion. You have to keep asking questions. Your customers won't always know what impact they're looking to get on their business. My favorite example when I'm explaining impact is actually one that has nothing to do with technology, sort of. Are you guys familiar with the Instant Pot, the kitchen appliance? Yeah. Right? Yeah, it's pretty great. I got one a couple years ago. It has like 12 buttons on it. It can do all kinds of things. When I brought it home for the first time, I didn't have a pressure cooker ever, so I pressure cooked a chicken in it. It was great. It was my first value. I did something that I was unable to do before I bought that Instant Pot. The next day, my son made yogurt in it. Then we did something else with it. All those are value moments as we're using those features and functions of it. But the impact was that I could make dinner in half the time and reclaim that time for myself, with my family, for me, whatever. I could actually replace some of my appliances and just get rid of things and reclaim some counter space. That's the impact. That's what you want to get to. And that's why you have to keep pursuing those questions. And there's one more component to impact. This works for spouses and kids too. There is rational and emotional impact. Human beings make emotional decisions and look for data to validate them and just back them up. It's just what we do. You want to look at your customers and find out both rational impacts, which are going to be things that benefit the business first and the individual second. This will tend to be things like increased revenue, saving dollars, increasing efficiency. Emotional impact benefits an individual first and the company second. So what that means is if you have a stakeholder you're working with, they work with you on the implementation, it's really successful, and they get promoted, right? Or you have somebody who just started the role who's your champion, and they want to have a quick win and look really good in their new job. Those are the emotional impacts, and you want to identify both. And sometimes you will actually talk about them openly with your customer, and sometimes you won't, and you will just know this. But if you can identify these, this is really going to help you continue to battle that churn, to Greg's point yesterday, and make sure that you're continuing to hit these impact moments along the journey. All right, so now what? We have the growth curve, we have the bow tie, we have the math, we have our growth engine. So Chrissy made some excellent points this morning about storytelling. You have the seat at the table. You have to know what to do with it. And using information like this to formulate the story, to justify what needs to be justified, your spend, all of that is important. You can't afford to let your leaders make short-term decisions. It's especially dangerous right now. What's going on with the economy, CS is more important than ever because it is going to be harder to get new logos right now. You cannot afford to lose your customers. You need to grow them. You need to lean into your customer base. So if you're working at a company where the reaction to what's going on in the world right now is to cut CS headcount and hire more BDRs and AEs, then you need to figure out how to educate your leaders a little bit more with tools like these facts about recurring revenue companies, so you can sway them and explain. CS is not a cost center. It is a revenue engine. And it is the most important revenue engine once you get out of that product market fit stage in the growth curve. Understand your LTV to CAC ratio. Go talk to your finance team. If you don't know what your cost of acquisition is, ask them. Even just get it generally. Then look at your LTV, your average. Look at that 3-to-1 ratio that I mentioned. Where are you at? That is a really powerful story. You'll see this everywhere now. And if you just search on LinkedIn for sustainability, this is the hot topic at the moment. And that's the kind of metric that illustrates if you're going to be a sustainable company or not. So if you can get this even close just to drive the conversation, that can be really great. The last thing is having a strong operating model for CS. And I was thrilled, actually, that Sterling's topic delved into this, the whole crew thing and working as a team, because there's really 3 things that you need to make sure that you hit when you're building all of the things that you build on the right side of the bow tie. Common language across your CS teams and with your sales teams, your marketing teams, all of those. Everybody using the same terms. When it comes to data, aligning around the same data points and systems, those sorts of things. And facilitating interoperability so that what the sales team is doing meshes into what the CS team is doing. All those kind of things that a lot of you talked about during the sessions this week. Now, one of the things I love about Winning by Design is that they put out tons of IP open source. That was one of the things that sold me on the company in the first place. And what we've seen over time is that for the left side of the bow tie, there's been a lot of frameworks. From BANT in the 60s that IBM launched to help sales teams validate prospects based on budget, to Medic, to Spin, there's like a million of them out there. But there's really nothing for the right side of the bow tie. There's some best practices, but there's no real frameworks. So you guys are getting a little preview because on October 3rd, we are launching a CS operating model, and it's going to be the first one that is out there. A lot of this is going to not look shocking to people who have been in CS for a while. It does reflect a lot of the best practices. But the thing that's important about it and great about it is this can be a tool to leverage in your discussions with leadership when you're trying to show what you need to build and why. The idea is that the operating model lays out the key moments across the onboarding phase, adoption phase, expansion phase. Talks about the skills that you need to have and the core principles that drive what happens on the right side of the bow tie. And each one of the moments underneath the phases will have what we call our blueprints, just a single visual slide that walks through how to most successfully achieve that sort of thing. So it's just a resource. Like I said, it's going to be open source, which I love. And we love feedback on it, especially from people like you who are CS practitioners, because you'll certainly, I'm sure, have feedback on how it could be better, be more useful to you, all those kind of things. So, in short, make sure you help your leaders understand the math, the rationale. CS is not a nice to have. It's not an opinion. If you want a sustainable company, it is critical. Understand and track your LTV to CAC ratio. This is a new one for a lot of people in CS, so get your head around that one. And then just execute exceptionally when you have CS. And so much was talked about in the past 2 days around this, so I certainly don't need to repeat it, but leverage a lot of those kind of things so that it gets really strong. And that's it. Yeah. I know we are short on time, but we'll do a couple of questions. 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. Any questions?
Thanks, Beth. That was great. One quick question. How much does it cost for all that stuff you just showed us at the end there? It's coming out on October 3rd.
Oh, what, the operating model?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's free.
It's free.
It's
awesome.
Free.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Mark.
Great. Any other questions?
I encourage you also, when it comes to this kind of stuff, Winning by Design website has so many free resources that are really powerful. My favorite thing, which is not a free thing, but it's a course that we recently started doing about revenue architecture, walks through all of this stuff in much more detail about how recurring revenue companies operate. And I truly have never seen something that leaders, C-level executives tend to be the main audience for it, and other leaders at companies. And they come out of it with a whole new view on the business, how to look at it holistically, how to look at it as a system, and with CS front and center too. Not because I love CS, which I do, but because it is so critical. So check out what we have. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So you mentioned that when we're investing in sales, it's heavy, specifically in this recession. My example is the same last quarter, heavy investment in sales. What is the ratio between the investment in sales versus CS? And an example, sales in my organization, the last quarter grew by 20 people, but I'm growing by 2. So I want to understand if it's linear or any ratio that you have to provide some examples.
Yeah, between sales versus CS, like
CS,
investment,
yes.
headcount, that kind of thing. So I've actually been looking for a study on this. I was talking to Greg yesterday. I'm like, I would love to get somebody to do more research on this one along the growth curve and what the right ratio is of sales to CS spend. But here's what I'll say. A good thing to look at if you're looking especially at headcount is look at how much revenue is from the base. What is your renewal number? What is the expansion goal? And then look at the new logo side and what is the new revenue goal there? Then look at headcount. How many dollars do you have invested in helping hit that new revenue number? And how many do you have? How many resources? How much investment are you putting into support and hold on to that renewal number and the expansion number? It's usually pretty obviously just out of whack. And these days, again, especially with the economy, you cannot afford to lose customers right now. And if you just map that out, it's usually pretty clear. If you have like 2 people who are trying to hold on to millions of dollars, when you put it in that sort of ratio, then people tend to react to it pretty strongly. So I'm a big fan of using math to justify these things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone. A very warm thank you to Beth.